Your experience actually includes stints at other financial services brands, but also Whirlpool, where you worked on KitchenAid, which is a decidedly consumer brand, as is Wells Fargo now. But what are some of the universals with regard to consumer engagement that you've taken from your experience?
Historically, people thought of the manufacturing as being the most important part of the product, and now I think even certainly when I was at KitchenAid, really appreciating the experience and the emotional wrapper around that, even more important and more differentiating. And it really is the universal truth of understanding what your customers need and expect and being able to deliver that through ultimately the whole experience.
So Wells Fargo itself has undergone some significant business changes recently, and you mentioned to me a moment ago it went from being a real regional bank to now it's a national player. What are some of the brand challenges associated with that?
We tend to operate and think very locally, which has always been a strength of the bank, and we still do that, but now we have to overlay kind of a national and international perspective to everything we do. And so we used to do our sponsorship strategy was anchored primarily in local community sponsorships, and now we have engaged in more national sponsorships to augment that.
As we've come out of the financial crisis, what are the ongoing brand challenges that exist for you stemming from that?
Particularly in America, consumers are somewhat skeptical of the motives behind financial institutions. We do enjoy a higher favorability ratio than most of our large competitors, but that still is lower than where we'd like to be in terms of being a really world-class brand from a reputation standpoint. When you look at various segments, there are some interesting dynamics where some segments are more willing to forgive. Others, like millennials, are actually somewhat skeptical, but then also are very open to institutions that do the right thing. And so by some of us just reinforcing the good that we do, we think that we'll be able to overcome that pretty quickly.
What is your perspective with regard to new technology, and what's your sort of risk tolerance? How do you test new things, and when do you make that determination that you see something that you must necessarily invest in?
We are very focused obviously on convenience and access, because we know that particularly for millennials, that's a huge driver of account acquisition and overall satisfaction. But we also know that as people age in their cycles, that relationship and guidance becomes much more important. And so one of the things we have to understand is how to use all these new technologies also to further the relationship and guidance. So a great example is social media, which is obviously it's very important. Our brand is all about working together. We know that being in a space where people are open to having conversations and really work together on issues is the definition of social media, so we're very engaged in that. But in a highly regulated industry, it's tough to do, and so that's an area where we are making choices and we're testing our way in to understand how do we build relationships first and foremost, and that the commerce side of it probably takes a back step to first and foremost understanding the relationship piece, whereas obviously through other forms of digital like mobile, we would probably move faster on the commerce side because that's what consumers want.
Are you looking at the technologies too in a twofold way, meaning one is for as a brand advertising platform, one is for the utility component, the transactional platform component?
I think historically we did very much that it was sort of the media and the message versus the utility, but increasingly those are becoming one and the same. A great example is even just through the ATM, which our ATMs are now highly customizable. People can give to a charity through our ATMs. There's many things that we wish them a happy birthday through our ATMs. So they are in essence becoming a communication platform in addition to the utility of getting money.
How is data becoming a core component, now that there are all these new touch points that sort of generate this influx of new data on your customers?
Data is a very important part of how we are able to make decisions and offer the right product or service to our customers, and at the same time it's an incredible enabler for marketing and for sales. And so we are really actively working on defining what that data strategy is. I think like everybody else, we're overwhelmed at times by the sheer amount of data, particularly we do in our community bank alone over 6 billion transactions a year. So we are a high transaction frequency business, and as a result we have more information than we possibly could use or need, and so being able to distill that down into what's important when and how is the challenge.